Sophie Cunningham, just said the thing everybody's been waiting for someone to say out loud about Brittney Griner. She stood in front of cameras after Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever dropped 123 points on the Connecticut Sun, and she called for a ban on men playing in women's sports. No hedging, no apology. And everybody watching knew exactly what she meant. So let's break down what she actually said, why the timing wasn't accidental, and what this means for the rest of the season as tensions escalate with Griner. Let me know down in the comments below if you stand with Sophie Cunningham.
Played with BG for 6 years, and so I know her like the back of my hand.
On that same vein, in that story with ESPN, you talked about wanting to protect young girls who shouldn't have to go against biological men. Just can you expand your viewpoint on that?
I mean, I think I said what I said. I think it's kind of common sense. And I think I'll always believe in that. I think it's really important to protect children. And that's little girls who are also involved in that category. And so I stand on what I said, and I always believe that.
The paint. Griner leans in, and there it is again. Contact that disrupts Clark's rhythm, and no whistle follows. Fans rewound that clip about 100 times on social media because it looked exactly like something they'd seen before. And that's the problem. This isn't the first time. Go back to 2025. The Fever facing Griner's former team, the Atlanta Dream, and there's Griner driving into Clark with a body check so obvious that broadcast replays caught it from 3 different angles. Griner barked something from the bench that game too, and cameras picked up enough of it for fans to fill in the rest. That night, the referees swallowed their whistles. So when it happens again in 2026 against a different team in a different building, people didn't call it a coincidence anymore.
We have heard nothing from the WNBA, absolutely nothing.
Brittney Griner elbowing Caitlin Clark in a crazy way and then calling her a trash white girl.
And Brittney Griner has not commented, which I find significant. I've watched that video countless times, and it sure looks like Brittney Griner says, white girl.
The WNBA should investigate Brittney Griner's seemingly uttering profanities about white girl.
During the July 22nd game against Connecticut, the pattern didn't just repeat, it multiplied. Clark gets bumped going through a screen, no call. She takes contact on her arm during a drive, no call. Then she points at the scoreboard after a bucket, simply pointing, nothing else. And somehow that's the moment the referees decide to blow the whistle and hit her with a technical. Think about that for a second. Real contact gets ignored all game, but pointing at a scoreboard gets flagged. Fans in the arena booed loudly enough that the broadcast picked it up clearly. Commentators calling the game started asking out loud why the same few missed calls kept breaking in the same direction. By the third quarter, social media had already erupted into a full-fledged debate about whether this officiating crew had it out for Clark specifically.
Everyone always is coming at it as a negative. Well, me coming out with that, there's so many people who are coming out with the positive saying, you know what, finally someone has said something. And I don't really look at either side of those because I know whatever I say, I'm going to get hate and I'm going to get love. And if I'm going to live by the love, I'm going to die by the hate. And that's just not who I am. I beat to my own drum. And so people are always going to have something to say. You could win the championship. You could be the best at whatever it is. And there's still people who are going to hate on you. And so that's just what this world is. So I'm confident in who I am. I'm proud of who I am. I'm happy being me. And I'm going to continue to be that.
And Clark's frustration isn't happening in isolation. She's picked up 7 technicals this season already, and every single one gets brought up whenever people discuss a possible suspension hanging over her head. So picture the pressure she's playing under. Every bump, every shove, every no-call chips away at her composure, but she can't react too strongly, or she risks another technical and moves closer to sitting out a game that actually matters. That's the trap. Get hit and stay silent, or push back and risk punishment. Clark's competitive fire is exactly why she's must-watch basketball, but that same fire is being used against her every time the whistle stays in the referee's pocket.
Protecting young girls in sport and women in sport, I feel very strongly about that. I think that's why you have Title IX. That's why you have some of the greats in women's sports. If Title IX and women's sports weren't protected, then you wouldn't hear about any type of women in sport. And so I think in the future, it's just really important.
That's the moment Cunningham decided she wasn't staying quiet anymore. Watching her teammate get hit possession after possession, game after game, and getting punished for pointing at a scoreboard instead, something in Cunningham snapped. Not recklessly, but deliberately. She'd watched enough tape, heard enough excuses, and seen enough missed calls pile up. So when the final buzzer sounded on a 123-88 blowout, Cunningham walked toward the cameras with something to say. and this time she wasn't going to let it slide.
I don't dislike anyone. Like, I think there's room for absolutely everyone here, and I think there's room to love everyone. And I truly think when you get people in the same room and you have conversations, you actually have a lot in common with a lot of people. And so I'm there to love, but I'm also there to love biological women, and I think that there are rights that need to be protected. And like I said, I'm going to stand true to that. I'll never falter in my beliefs in that, but I have never once said I hated the trans community. Like I said, I think there's space for everyone.
The final buzzer hadn't even stopped echoing when Cunningham started walking toward the microphones. No hesitation, no looking around for approval, just straight to the cameras like she'd been waiting for this exact moment. Reporters barely got a question out before she started talking about protecting women's sports. Not vaguely either. She flat out said men shouldn't be allowed to play in women's leagues. And she said girls deserve locker rooms where they feel safe. Nobody in that room expected her to go there, but she did. And she didn't blink once while saying it. She talked about the laws that exist to protect fairness for women in sports. And she framed her entire stance around love and truth instead of just frustration. That's what caught people off guard. It wasn't a rant. It was calm. It was direct. And it sounded like something she'd thought through carefully before saying it out loud in front of cameras.
There's going to be some negative comments, but there's also a whole bunch of positive comments too that no one really ever, people hate positivity for some reason. I have no idea why, but there's a lot of positive comments too when it comes to that. And so, it is what it is. Like I said, we're all human. No one's perfect here. And so I really don't care what other people have to say. I know who I am. My people know who I am. And hopefully I'm doing them proud and making room for young boys and girls in our world to have a better future than we do.
You followed the news about Griner over the years. You can connect the dots immediately regarding why Cunningham specifically chose to break her silence and her timing. She didn't need to spell it out because the context did that for her. And the timing, right after another confrontation with Griner, made the target obvious to everyone tuned in. What made it hit even harder was the contrast. Her voice stayed level the entire time. No yelling, no finger pointing, just steady eye contact with the reporters in front of her. But online, it exploded within minutes. Clips of her comments hit social media before she'd even left the podium, and the reaction split instantly between people cheering her on and people accusing her of dog whistling. Either way, everybody was talking about it, and that's exactly the kind of reaction a calculated statement is built to create.
As you know, this is something the president feels strongly about as well, and the American people do too. That men should not be playing in women's sports. It's completely ludicrous that anyone could support that. It's even more ludicrous that you do have Sophie Cunningham, a female athlete herself, very accomplished in her own right, coming forth and speaking that truth that men shouldn't play in women's sports. We want to protect women and girls. They are clearly very out of touch with the American public on this issue, which again is an 80-20 issue. It's common sense. It's rooted in basic biological fact that men should not be competing against women on playing.
Poured in fast. Fans flooded comment sections calling her brave, calling her the first player with the guts to say what everyone's been thinking for years. USA Today picked up the story within hours. ESPN ran it across their shows the next morning, and the LA Times followed with their own breakdown of the comments and reaction. Other players remained quieter, some posting vague support without naming names, which only reinforced the sense that Cunningham's had said something a lot of people agreed with, but were afraid to say themselves. Some fans started calling her a folk hero right there in the replies, saying she did what no one else in the league was willing to do. That kind of reaction doesn't happen by accident, and it doesn't happen for a slip of the tongue either. This was deliberate. She picked her words, she picked her moment, and she picked the biggest possible stage to make her stand. Now, the conversation around fairness in the league isn't some quiet debate happening in group chats anymore. It's front-page sports news, and it all traces back to one calm, calculated post-game interview. To understand why her words hit as hard as they did, you have to go back further because this didn't come out of nowhere.
Griner, who I can't stand, sad that she's a Baylor grad.
Yeah,
she called her a trash, expletive white girl. That was the lip reading. Yes, trash, white girl. Trash, blanking, white girl, is what she said.
Why does this same matchup keep boiling over every single time these two share a court? It's not one incident, it's a pattern stretching back 3 years. And every time people think it's settled down, something else happens that drags it right back into the headlines. Go back through the seasons, and the timeline builds itself. Little shoves during rebounds, words exchanged after whistles. Nothing ever significant enough to force the league's hand, but enough that fans watching closely started keeping track. Each clash added another layer, And by the time 2025 rolled around, people were already primed to expect fireworks whenever Griner and Clark ended up on the same floor. Then came the Atlanta Dream game. And this time it's worth looking at the bench chatter, not just the hit. Cameras caught Griner running her mouth from the sideline. And while the broadcast couldn't pick up every word clearly, enough of it carried for fans to fill in the blanks quickly. That's the part that stuck with people longer than the body check itself. A body check happens in the flow of a game, and you can argue it's physical basketball. But barking something from the bench, away from the play, away from any legitimate basketball reason, that's personal. And fans recognized it as personal immediately.
Brittney Griner is, in fact, a man.
And every single time, the response from officials and the league lands the same way. Quiet. No real statement, no real discipline. Just a no call in the moment and silence afterward. That's what builds resentment. Because when the same type of incident keeps getting minimized again and again, people stop calling it an accident and start calling it a pattern the league doesn't want to address.
Flag you, Brittney. Let me see something real quick. Rick, thank you. Get the hell out of here, yo. Yo.
Down there.
Jab stepping, it's a brick. Swing and a miss.
Oh!
Yo, I ain't gonna fake it right now.
That this person is not a female. Firstly, because this was actually posted to Brittney's personal Instagram.
Underneath all of this, there have been rampant theories about Griner's real identity and gender. And speculation like that spreads fast once people feel like the league's protecting someone instead of holding them accountable. That's why Cunningham's comments hit the way they did. She didn't just react to one game, she gave voice to something fans felt was overdue by years, not days. People weren't just reacting to her words, they were reacting to finally hearing someone inside the league say it instead of anonymous accounts online.
When it comes to Instagram, they use a combination of like AI detection and plus manual surveyors, but specifically the AI detection to make sure that no explicit content ends up on the platform. So clearly whatever AI detection system was used when Brittney posted this and it stayed up for 106 weeks was not like, oh, this is a bare female chest, we have to take this down. It obviously assumed that Brittney was male.
And this isn't happening in isolation either. The whole conversation folds directly into the bigger national argument about male athletes competing in women's sports. An argument that's been running hot at every level of athletics, from high school track to the Olympics. Cunningham stepping into that conversation, using a WNBA postgame podium as her platform, plugs this rivalry directly into a debate far bigger than one game or one player. Fans picked up on specific words quickly, calling Cunningham's comments exposing Griner, calling it vanquishing her, like she'd settled the argument just by speaking it out loud.
It's on both sides. Boston over to her fellow All-Star, and Caitlin Clark gets the scoring started for Indiana. An area to watch throughout. Mitchell, one of the fastest in the W. Clark, 2 for 2 from outside the arc. Here's Caitlin Clark.
On my friend. No, we knew where you were going. Some preserves.
Caitlin Clark, 3 for 3 from.
Cunningham's words gave that belief a voice loud enough to travel across every major outlet covering the story. So when people look back at July 22nd, they're not just going to remember a blowout final score. They're going to remember it as the night 3 years of tension finally got said out loud, in public, on record, with a name attached. And once the emotional part of the story had its moment, the Fever still had a basketball game to finish. And they finished it by putting up numbers nobody in that building expected to see. 123 points. That's the number that stopped the entire league from scrolling past their phones that night. Final score, Fever 123, Sun 88. And by the time that number hit the board, everyone watching knew they just witnessed something that doesn't happen twice.
Stephanie White was asked in the pregame. And Clark hits her 4-3. He's got 4 in 8 minutes. College. Clark, 5 for 5.
Come on, Caitlin, shoot till your arm falls off.